So the government's response to a decade-long collapse in public trust in mainstream news institutions is to mandate that those same mainstream news institutions appear more prominently in your news feed. So I came onto my YouTube channel and went to my studio, as I normally do, to check how my videos were doing, and one of the notifications that I first got from YouTube itself was warning me about a potential coming change being imposed on YouTube by the UK government. This should make every person who's ever searched for an alternative perspective, every creator who's built a life through honest work, every citizen who still believes they own their own attention, it should make all of us stop and say this is a problem. Freedom of speech without freedom of reach is hollow. The UK government's Department for Culture, Media and Sport, the very department charged with stewarding Britain's creative life, has published a green paper titled Watch This Space. Buried inside its careful administrative language is a proposal that should make every single one of us concerned. The UK government is not proposing to ban YouTube. It's not deleting channels or silencing voices in the crude, obvious way that history records and condemns. It's proposing something far more elegant and far more dangerous. It wants to require platforms like YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram to make content from designated trusted providers, the BBC, ITV, Channel 4, more prominent, more discoverable, more algorithmically favored than everyone else. The consultation asks whether this can be achieved voluntarily, with legislation standing ready as the backup if platforms refuse to comply. They have used the word prominence as if it were neutral. It's not neutral, it's a redistribution of your attention by bureaucratic decree. On a platform where 45,000 full-time jobs are supported in the UK alone, where independent creators contribute over 2.2 billion to the British GDP annually, prominence is a loaded weapon. Your attention, it's finite. There are only so many hours in your day, only so many slots on your homepage, only so many recommended videos before you scroll away or close the screen. Every single moment of digital real estate that is handed by legislative decree to one institution is a moment that's taken by force from someone else. If the BBC is elevated algorithmically, the independent historian is depressed algorithmically. If ITV is placed at the top of search results by mandate, the investigative journalist running her own channel is pushed below it by the mandate. The playlist of your online life is quietly being rearranged, not by you and not by a fair contest of ideas, but by the bureaucrats in Whitehall. YouTube's own senior European policy director has said it plainly. Prominence rules seek to distort the open market, forcing YouTube to prioritize government-selected channels over what viewers actually want to see. This is unfair to users, creators, and the broader journalism ecosystem. By forcing these channels to the front of the line, everyone else gets pushed back, regardless of what viewers actually want to see. The UK government justifies this intervention on the grounds of combating misinformation. The idea that audiences left to their own devices will stumble into dangerous falsehoods and only officially sanctioned voices can be trusted to lead them back into the light. But here's the question nobody in the House of Commons is asking: if BBC journalism is genuinely superior, if it truly produces more reliable, more trustworthy content than anything an independent creator can offer, why does it need the government to put its thumb on the scale? Why are these legacy media institutions falling behind, being eclipsed by independent media? Surely if you have a superior product, the consumer is going to recognize that. Is it not therefore more likely that this is an act of absolute desperation from a system of control that's beginning to lose control? So if viewers are turning away from the BBC documentaries in favor of independent creators, that's not an algorithmic failure, that's audience preference. And in a free society, audience preference is sovereign, not restricted and censored as the UK government wants to do. There is a word for what happens when governments decide to override audience preference in favor of preferred speakers. That word is not prominence, and it's not discoverability, it's not media literacy. The word is propaganda, a propaganda infrastructure. The BBC, the organization the government wishes to algorithmically privilege above all others, concluded its most turbulent year in decades in 2025. Its own annual report acknowledged editorial lapses, internal cultural failures, and structural funding pressures. Its Director General and head of BBC News both resigned after a Panorama documentary was found to have spliced together two segments of Donald Trump's speech recorded 50 minutes apart, creating the false impression that he had directly incited violence. This act was so serious, the New York Times called it the BBC's worst crisis in decades. The bias from the BBC on events of global importance, from COVID to foreign conflicts, the pushing of woke, societally damaging politics, the protecting of child abusers like Jimmy Savile, one controversy after another. And yet the government's entire proposal rests on the assumption that these broadcasters are uniquely, inherently, structurally trustworthy. Trustworthy enough to be elevated above the entire rest of the internet by law. And yet the BBC's own history makes a mockery of that assumption. Trust is not a legal status, it's not granted by some form of royal charter, it's earned, it's tested, and as the BBC itself has discovered, it can be lost. And there is a darkly ironic backdrop to all of this. The Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism, in its 2026 Digital News Report, the most comprehensive study on news consumption in the world, surveying nearly 100,000 people across 48 countries, has just recorded trust in news at its lowest level since measurements began in 2015. In the United Kingdom, trust in news has fallen to 30%. Down 5 points in a single year. 50% of UK respondents say they try to avoid the news altogether. So the government's response to a decade-long collapse in public trust in mainstream news institutions is to mandate that those same mainstream news institutions appear more prominently in your newsfeed. It's as if a restaurant that had progressively emptied out its customers over 10 years then lobbied the government to compel pedestrians to enter by law. The audiences have not been deceived by algorithms into abandoning establishment, legacy, dinosaur media. They've made an informed choice, and that choice, however inconvenient it may be for the institutions that are losing, belongs to them, their failures, their alliances to powerful interests that supersede any form of journalistic integrity, the psychological warfare that has been mislabeled as news for decades. It's now being left by the wayside. And so the response is to be afraid and to attack, because this new legislative proposal for policing content online is undeniably a response from the system that's coming from fear of losing power. The Green Paper uses a particular word with extraordinary frequency. The word is trusted. Trusted providers, trusted sources, trusted news. Who decided these were trustworthy platforms? Was it you? Was it me? Was it a democratically arrived upon consensus based on surveys? Or was it simply a decision made by decision makers without any thought towards how the population felt towards it? In case you were wondering, it is the latter. They just don't give a shit. The Consultation paper already referenced periods of societal unrest or crisis as occasions when this elevated prominence would be especially important to control the narrative. We were told explicitly that trusted British news would be placed at the top of the feeds during such moments. Let that settle in for a second. During civil unrest, the precise moment when power is most likely to be abused, when the government has the greatest interest in controlling the narrative, when citizens most desperately need unfiltered information, that's when they want to jump in. The government wants to ensure that its preferred voices are the first thing that you hear and the first thing that you see. Every expansion of government power over information begins with something that sounds reasonable, right? Each step sounds modest, each step builds on the last, and each step transfers a little more of the power over what you discover, what you're allowed to find from your own choice to someone else's decree. The Electronic Frontier Foundation, one of the world's most respected digital rights organizations, has been tracking the erosion of internet freedom in Britain with increasing alarm. Over 550,000 people signed a petition calling for reform or repeal of the Online Safety Act, making it one of the largest public expressions of concern about a UK digital law in modern history. The government's response was to say it had no plans to reverse course. 500,000 voices, and the bureaucrats in Whitehall said, "We're not listening." Something was built over the last 2 decades that is extraordinary and unprecedented. Before the internet, before YouTube, before the podcasts, before the independent newsletter, there were gatekeepers. Not necessarily malicious ones, but gatekeepers nonetheless. Television executives decided which documentaries existed. Commissioning editors decided which investigations were worth funding. Broadcast licenses and corporate boards determined whose voices reached millions. That system had many strengths. It also had a catastrophic flaw. It was never meritocratic. It was always a system designed to perpetuate the voices already inside the room, inside the club. The internet demolished that system. Not perfectly. Nothing's perfect, but fundamentally and irreversibly. A historian in Arnold, Nottinghamshire could reach more people in a week than a television broadcaster reached in a year. An investigative journalist with no institutional backing could expose a scandal that every major newsroom had overlooked. A teacher could give a lecture that reached 1 million students who had never set foot in a university. That's the power of the internet. The first time in modern history that influence was genuinely available to anyone with something worth saying. And now the government is proposing, quietly and politely, and using the language of trust and safety, to reverse this. I want to leave you with the question that no government minister has been able to answer, the question that cuts through every justification, every consultation paper, every carefully chosen word about prominence and discoverability and trusted providers. Who owns your attention? When you open YouTube, your device, your phone, your account, your time, your curiosity, whose preferences should determine what you find? Should it be yours, or should it be a Secretary of State? I know my answer, and I believe you know yours as well. And here is what that answer requires of us. It requires that we respond to this consultation before it closes. That we make our voices heard, not with resignation, not with the weary cynicism of people who have already decided that the powers always win, but with the clarity of citizens who understand exactly what is being proposed and refuse to consent to it. Share this argument. Find the independent creators, the investigative journalists, the historians, the teachers whose work you value, and support them directly. Subscribe, share, fund, because the system is literally stacking up against us right now. Governments are fallible. Institutions are fallible. Every era has believed its official truth was the final truth, and every era has been proven wrong. The solution to human fallibility in the information space has never been to concentrate the power to determine truth in fewer officially trusted hands. The solution has always been more voices, more debate, more challenge, more dissent. Every revolution in human understanding began as a minority position held against institutional consensus. Germ theory, continental drift, heliocentrism. If prominence had been allocated according to official consensus forever, the world would still be flat. Freedom of speech without freedom of reach is hollow. It is the freedom to speak into an empty room that no algorithm will ever find. And in the 21st century, algorithmic reach is not a luxury. It is the only mechanism by which a free society remains genuinely free. That is what is at stake here, not BBC funding, not YouTube revenue, not a consultation paper that may or may not become law. What is at stake is whether the future of human knowledge and discourse is shaped by the choices of millions of free individuals or by the preferences of a small number of officials who've decided with the very best intentions that they know better. I don't think they do. What do you think?